From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. It was a uniquely busy week in the Alabama legislature as lawmakers met for the 26th and 27th legislative days. That leaves 3 more legislative days to go in the 30-day session. They are likely to wrap things up next week, though there remains a possibility that the session could extend into that following week. We'll start our coverage with the budgets, which are almost complete. The House this week took up the general fund, which at $3.4 billion is a record spending plan. The House put an additional $37 million in the budget and $38 million more in the supplemental spending plan. Those will be spread out amongst state agencies. House General Fund Budget Chairman Rex Reynolds said he worked closely with his Senate counterpart each step of the way.
SB 67 does reflect a $3,373,459,234. And Mr. Speaker, I have a committee sub, and since no BIR is required, I'll go ahead and explain that. As we discussed earlier, like I say, we ended the 2023 budget cycle with about a 16.6% increase over our 2022 numbers. We have seen that same type of increase in this fiscal budget, mainly due to the same factors that I commented on the supplemental, our SSUT tax, our ad valorem taxes, and certainly our interest on state accounts that continue to stay up much longer than we anticipated.
The general fund now goes back to the Senate, which could send it to the governor as soon as Tuesday. Chairman Reynolds also moved legislation appropriating a portion of the state's opioid settlement funds. He spelled out where those funds would be invested.
Members, as this body directed with the passage of HJR 21, creating the Oversight Commission on Alabama Opioid Settlement Funds to develop a statewide plan for the investment and use of these funds. Today, we, the Commission, submit that statewide plan as a report to the legislature, to you. The plan, we feel like, outlines abatement strategies that can be funded either direct allocations from this body, which you will see next week traveling with the budget bills. We dropped that bill today. It is HB 479. That's the actual appropriations. The commission felt like that it was appropriate to come back to this body, both the House and the Senate, to appropriate those funds, and we're going to carry through that process. And those grants can be allocated through, but not limited to, the Mental Health Department, through our Veterans Affairs, or the Department of Health.
The Senate took up and passed the Education Trust Fund this week. That budget is also a record at $9.3 billion. Senate Education Budget Chairman Arthur Orr said he was pleased with the end result, but warned that tougher budgetary times could be ahead.
The value of the dollars that we're appropriating today don't have the same value, and if all things being equal, we are $700 per student less than we were in 2010. So that's a real concern. We need to put more money towards education. I don't know the future, but I do read the financial reports and the financial media to know enough that the predictions are not rosy for the next year or 2 or 3, and that will adversely affect our education revenues. That's a real concern going forward.
We're looking at, once again, education staff are going to receive a pay raise. That's going to be the same thing in the general fund budget, as you all saw. For state employees, I think that's very important. Our school teachers and staff and state workers do a great job. That's one element. I think there are other elements that are in looking at ways that we can have capital equipment, resources go to schools, which is very important. You saw a huge commitment there. Also, another commitment that's tough to hear and tough to talk about, but the amount of money that we're spending on mental health related issues associated with our schools, even in elementary and middle schools, is something that is hard to know, but it's a requirement, and we have increased significantly the amount of dollars that are going to those projects.
The Education Trust Fund, Supplemental Spending Plan, and the Advancement and Technology Fund all passed the Senate. The bills went back to the House, where members voted not to accept the Senate's changes and go to a conference committee to work out the differences. Look for that next week. The big issue of the week was, of course, gambling. On Tuesday, the the conference committee charged with coming up with a compromise between the divergent House and Senate plans did just that, reporting out a plan that both chambers considered. The House passed it without much fanfare, but things got a little tricky when it went to the Senate. Capitol Journal's Jeff Sanders has that story.
20 ayes, 15 nays. Conference committee fails.
Are we able to make a motion to carry this over? Make a motion to carry this over?
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right.
Chaotic moments on the floor of the Alabama Senate. By a 20-15 vote, it appeared senators fell one vote short of the two-thirds majority needed to pass a constitutional amendment on gambling legislation from a conference committee. But that wasn't the case.
Procedurally, what we have is we had a conference report that we had from the House that received 20 votes. That meant that the conference report was accepted, was concurred with, but the CA had to have a separate vote.
With the gambling legislation tabled, the question remains if proponents can flip at least one vote in their favor.
Somebody can always come back and make the motion to non-concur and go back to conference again. We can be sent back to conference again. But you look at the days that we have, okay? And so right now, we just working with what we got. We've been dealt a hand, and I'm hopefully that, members will come around.
Senator Greg Albritton, the bill's sponsor in the Senate, is now a surprising no vote.
And the reports that's come in, the latest one that came in, took some moves into areas that I was unable to influence to gain the room that I needed along those lines.
And while talks continue behind the scenes, one key figure wanting lawmakers to vote yes is Governor Kay Ivey.
Now it's time for the people of Alabama to get their say. Legislators have had their time to say how they feel. Now it's time to let the people vote.
But with only 3 meeting days left in the session, time is running short. Reporting for Capitol Journal, I'm Jeff Sanders.
Several bills got sent to Governor Kay Ivey this week. The House gave final passage to legislation aimed at cracking down on child labor violations. Senate Bill 119 from Senator Robert Stewart institutes stricter penalties for employers found to be in violation of existing child labor laws.
We're dealing with the advent of increasing violations. There's so many child labor violations going on, and this is a nationwide issue. We've seen from 2022 to 2023 an increase of child labor violations of nearly 40%.
Really?
And we've seen it all in Alabama as well. What was really the catalyst for this bill is just seeing in North Alabama, we had a young man, age 15, fall off a roof, ultimately to his demise, unfortunately. And so he was working a construction job. And so my thought was that we need to have safeguards in place to deter bad actors and companies to be a deterrent for companies to violate the child labor laws that are already on the books. So it increases civil penalties, so the fines, and it also increases criminal penalties. And so we have some felonies that will be levied upon employers who violate it. And the Department of Labor will be responsible for really the oversight of this.
The Senate gave final passage to legislation establishing the Alabama School for Health Sciences in Demopolis. The idea is to have a specialized high school for healthcare careers similar to the School of Fine Arts in Birmingham, the School of Math and Science in Mobile, and the School of Technology in Decatur. Senator Bobby Singleton said he worked closely with Governor Ivey on finally making this a reality.
Another jewel for the state of Alabama to be able to brag on. We'll be able to set a tone in the state of Alabama. When you got philanthropist groups like the Bloomberg who believe in you and invest in $26 million. They're going to do this with 10 other spots around the nation. And when you look at you, and we're the only rural area they're going to do it. They're mostly in urban areas. So I feel really good about Demopolis. I feel good that, you know, the investment that the state is going to give to us in Demopolis, they're going to be the greatest return on investment that we have seen, because those nurses, doctors, all those specialties will stay right here in Alabama.
Legislation also passed aiming to offer law enforcement and probate judges better tools for dealing with those in mental health crisis. Representative Russell Bedsole, who carried the bill, said he leaned on his law enforcement background to try to solve a tricky problem.
In my law enforcement career that I've been serving in for 25 years now, in one of my recent roles as the jail administrator, I really became very involved and interested in the mental health process and issues we have in our state. And I really got to see how the mental health, those people incarcerated and those people that are in the criminal justice system. And so this bill that I was able to partner in with some of the great people, Association of County Commissions of Alabama and some of our probate judges, really help us to attack some of the issues that maybe were barriers. Maybe we can help and assist in that mental health treatment process to get these individuals the help that they need.
Governor Ivey this week signed into law legislation that will allow Alabama Boy Scouts who were victims of abuse participate in the National Settlement Trust Fund.
This year we actually had a standalone bill just for Boy Scouts, and we called it the Scouts Honor Bill, because there was a National Boy Scouts Settlement Trust trust fund, and they had recognized that they've been at fault. There was money there, and unless we pass that bill this year, our roughly 1,500 survivors of child sex assault in the state of Alabama would not have had an opportunity to have access to the full amount of money. This is a civil settlement, to the full amount of money that they deserve. So I'm excited that we got that done this year.
The governor also signed into law a bill cracking down on artificial intelligence-created deepfake pornography. Representative Parker Moore carried that bill after hearing from a constituent who was victimized. I spoke to Moore and Leanne Cameron about her experience.
It was very real, and she had found images on her husband's computer and cell phone. Over 13,000 images were pulled where he had been creating this artificial intelligence porn using my face with a fake body. But when I first saw the video, I was like, man, this could really be me if I did this kind of stuff.
Oh my gosh.
So it really looked like me, and it was very alarming. So I contacted, who I thought I needed to contact. I told my work, I told, the police station, and then I also work on the arsenal, so I informed my boss and then the chain there. And ultimately there was nothing that could be done because this man had broken no real laws. So I was working with an investigator at the Madison Police Department, and he said, all I know to tell you is you can email your representative, that's about all you can do, unfortunately. So I did. I reached out to Mr. Moore here, and he got this law put in place, and I think it's, it's awesome.
The Senate Fiscal Responsibility and Economic Development Committee this week considered legislation that would require smartphone manufacturers to enable obscenity filters on devices sold in Alabama to help prevent minors from inadvertently being exposed to pornography. Some on the committee had reservations about putting the onus on manufacturers rather than parents, but ultimately the bill advanced to the full Senate.
The difficulty with this bill that I have is that now it puts this level of onus on the device manufacturers who only manufacture the phone, but not the content. And so, I get where it's going, and I definitely can appreciate the ideas here, but I just think the responsibility we place on the manufacturer would basically say that if a person, we're doing this for the state of Alabama, and I don't have any information that lets me know how costly that would be.
I just simply want to say I'm going to support the legislation, but I really, really wish that we went after the people and the entities that are doing the bad deed.
The Senate also took up the issue of parental leave for education employees, a plan to allow new mothers 6 weeks of paid leave after having or adopting a child passed committee earlier this week. But legislative leaders said the finances didn't add up yet, and it's too late in the session to pass that kind of bill. Senator Vivian Figures brought the bill to the floor and successfully amended it to be more expansive, to where parents would get 8 weeks paid leave, and it would apply for miscarriages or stillbirths. The Senate passed the bill, but only in a ceremonial way, as transmitting bills to the House past the 26th legislative day takes unanimous consent. But Figures was upset and lashed out at Republican leaders for not transmitting the bill anyway. Pro Tem Reed explained that the agreement all along was to bring it back next year.
Females are in a minority in this chamber, but your thoughts and your ideas are very important to what we're doing. And the fact that we're able to bring this up to date, your request, have the review and the discussion, even though we knew that it wasn't going to be able to make its path, you've already stated that you're going to be back next year and be continuing to work with all of us on things that are important related to this issue.
It really stings that you voted not to, that you objected to it being transmitted. It does, because it wasn't going anywhere anyway. And I've not objected to anything else being transmitted here. I always try to work with everybody. But maybe I'm going to have to start raising hell like Senator Smitherman and Senator Singleton does. But I'm just really disappointed because I haven't had many bills this session. Anyway, thanks a lot.
Another issue to watch as the session winds down is workers' comp. Senator Sam Gavan has legislation that, for the first time, would offer workers' compensation insurance to teachers and other education workers. It passed through the Senate quickly and without fanfare, but questions are now being raised about the cost to the state now that it's in the House. Gavan said those details are being worked out, but that most agree that the plan is needed.
It's so shocking that, to many legislators to find out that our educators do not have workers' compensation insurance or a program. Our state employees do. It's different a little bit, and I won't get into the nuances because I don't, not obviously, but I don't do workers' compensation work, so I don't understand all of the nuances there because it is a specialty of lawyers that handle that. But basically, when an employee gets injured, there's a procedure for them to be compensated. They don't get as much money, but they would be compensated. That happens with state employees, but it doesn't happen with our teachers. They have to go to the Board of Adjustments, which really isn't set up to handle those type of claims. As a 3-member panel that consists of the treasurer, the finance director, and the auditor. So most people acknowledge, school administrators and in the Board of Adjustments acknowledge there needs to be a program like this. The devil's sort of been in the details, and we're still kind of fine-tuning those details.
The House Judiciary Committee tends to have lively meetings and debates. That was again the case this week, here as the end of session draws near. Capitol Journal's Randy Scott reports.
The House Judiciary Committee takes on Senate Bill 312, seeking to change guidelines regarding parole hearings.
Allows an inmate to participate in a parole hearing either virtually, by means of video conference, or similar communication equipment. It allows the inmate to see and hear the members of the parole board, but not to be allowed to see, hear, or interact with the victims or victims' family.
Debate gets heated over this proposal.
If y'all have got it, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I have a substitute that is being passed out at this moment.
Mr. Faulkner, you got a substitute right now.
Mr. Chairman, we had talked about amendment, and I thought it would be easier to make it as a substitute. It maintains the language, paragraph B, that the inmate shall not be allowed to see, hear, or otherwise interact. Does not change that at all. but it is permissive. This is not a requirement. It is, the parole board may allow an inmate to participate.
There is a right for people to be present at involved in court proceedings. I appreciate what he's done to make sure that the victims' families or crime victims will not be seen. I think the parole board can make sure that the camera is focused only on the parole board.
This actually undermines the process, and I think it makes it a duty of ours to set it on the table because nobody ever had a chance to even discuss it. And again, it changes the entire spirit of the legislation. And I'm surprised that we're even having this conversation on a substitute, because if somebody did that to your bill, you'd have a fit.
To me, you're unfairly acting like I did something intentionally to the members of this committee that I've served on since 2014 when I arrived here with the chairman, and I don't appreciate that. And so, no, I let you have your piece.
You didn't let me have anything. You're not the chair of the committee.
All right, hey, one at a time. The meeting is carried over until the next morning, giving the sponsor a chance to talk to lawmakers and for tempers to cool off.
So we don't have law enforcement, we don't have victims that are driving sometimes 3 hours to sit through a 10, 15-minute hearing after they've waited there for a couple of hours and then go home.
Well, you got a favorite report, and we will get it to the rules chair and see if we can't get this on the House floor next week.
At the State House, Randy Scott, Capitol Journal.
The Legislative Council met this week and got an update on the construction of a new State House. Lawmakers got to see new renderings of what that building will look like inside and out. Here are a few. This is an aerial view showing how the new State House will fit into the larger Capitol complex. You'll notice that the current State House is not in this rendering because it will eventually be demolished and turned into a park. Here's a view of the front of the building where the public would enter. Pretty nice look, especially compared to the current building. Here's a look at some of the planned committee rooms, the renderings, which are going to offer a lot more space for the public. That's one of the problems with the current building, not enough space. And here's a look at the House and Senate chamber renderings, which will actually be located on the same floor instead of two different floors. That's going to save a lot of us from walking up and down those 2 flights of stairs every day. Legislative Services Agency Director Othni Latham said the plan is to have the new State House operational for the organizational session in 2027.
I think it's really important that we not leave here with a false sense of hope about when the legislature is functioning in the building. The legislature will be functioning in the building January of 27 for the organizational session of the next quadrennium, and that's been our commitment from day one and our goal from day one. And so it's exciting that the construction is moving at a quicker pace, but I think it's important to understand that piece of it.
It might be that someday it's about a 50-50. And so, the size of the minority caucus room, things like that have been taken into consideration because the idea is this is going to be here for a long time. And, we have to think about, what if roles were reversed, So those things are being discussed and have been discussed.
A major economic development announcement this week. Governor Kay Ivey and Montgomery Mayor Stephen Reed announced that Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, is building an $800 million data center here in the capital city. It is expected to create 100 jobs and build on the state's growing tech industry.
I'm proud to announce that Meta will open a data center right here in Montgomery that will build on their previous investment in our great state. I've got to say, it's not just the bricks and mortar here that we should be excited about, but bytes and data that will keep some of the world's most popular platforms running smoothly, right from our own backyard.
Meta's Montgomery data center will be optimized for our AI workloads as part of the highly advanced infrastructure that helps bring our technologies to life. These buildings and the hardware inside of them will help people connect with friends and family, find communities, and grow businesses. But it's important to us that this impact with our data centers is not only felt online. We want to make sure that we are creating a positive impact at the local level in communities like Montgomery.
When we come back, I'll be joined by Senator Greg Albritton, who is a key player in both the gambling debate and the budgets. After that, Department of Corrections Commissioner John Hamm joins me to offer a glimpse at the massive new prison being built in Elmore County and give an update on their efforts to recruit more prison guards. Stay with us.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts. Keep up with what's happening with Capital Journal. You're watching Alabama Public Television.
Welcome back to Capital Journal. Joining me next is State Senator Greg Albritton. Senator, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's been quite a week in the Alabama legislature, especially the Senate.
It has been.
Well, let's talk about the issue of the week, and that's gambling. And you had kind of a wild ride on this yourself because we were all waiting to see, would the conference committee report something out? And would you all be able to come up with a compromise plan between the House and the Senate? And it happened. Reported out, goes to the House floor, passes, goes upstairs to the Senate, ran into some trouble. Pretty late night, ended up only getting 20 votes, needed 21, but you were against the bill after having carried it. So walk me through why you voted the way you did.
Three particular aspects of the conference report that came out were just unpalatable for me to stand in support of it. First off, this bill did not include all the gambling that's going on in Alabama. The significant parts that I'm talking about there is sports gaming. Mm-hmm. Sports gaming is all over the place. It's on the phone, it's on the TV, it's on the radio. You hear the odds online when you check the plays. It has the odds listed.
Yeah.
Gaming, that is growing, is intensifying, and that's not in this bill at all. It'll be a Wild West, and in Alabama. Alabama has the largest sports gaming in the nation, and we simply chose not to deal with it. That was difficult enough for me to deal with. The other is online gaming, whether it be poker or whatever other type is available on phone and online. That is not dealt with in the bill either. So we had two significant growing parts of this industry that was left completely unregulated in this bill. And if we were going to do it, we'd have to do this whole thing over again with another CA. So those two things were difficult. And then the third part had to deal with my constituents, PCI. In all previous excursions down this path, there was always the attempt to enter into a compact with PCI,
right,
and would provide them another site, not a reservation site, but a actual site that's taxed and dealt with as the normal industry would with any other in Alabama. That was cut out. That was just eliminated. Not only that, but it was eliminated from the governor to be even able to negotiate anything with PCI in that regard. They were limited in the things that they could do. So those things simply made it unpalatable.
So not getting that extra site, because there was talk about North Alabama, maybe Birmingham or something like that.
Right.
So not getting that extra site was enough for the Porch Creeks to oppose the bill?
No, in fact, bluntly, PCI has not supported any of the bills that we've brought in.
Oh.
Okay,
that whether I've sponsored them or not, or voted on them or not, or voted with them or not, PCI has not supported any bill that Alabama has brought forward in regard to this. They have their own reasons and such. You'll have to talk to them about that. But as far as my concern was, as long as we had PCI with an opportunity to participate in the industry in which they are experts in Alabama, that was unpalatable, and I think unfair.
Talk about the sports betting component, because that was obviously a big part of the House passed package.
It was.
Very important to them, which is one of the reasons I was surprised about the compromise bill. I was surprised that the House would agree to anything that didn't have the sports betting component. But what is the opposition in the Senate to that? Is it that we don't want to legalize something? And because you talk a lot about addiction and things, when it comes to sports betting, what is the Senate's or the Senate caucus's opposition to that specific
You're
thing?
going to have to talk to other members on that. I have, as I've said, I think sports gaming is a plague that we have. It's growing and affecting all age groups, minors in particularly, all the way up. And why particular members simply don't want to deal with that, don't want to control it, don't want to limit it, is surprising to me.
Well, so again, it came one vote short of passing, but it can come back up, right? There was that procedural thing. It can come back up. Do you foresee it happening next week?
It's certainly possible. I mean, the bills are both remain in the basket and can be brought up anytime during session for consideration and for a vote. When and how that occurs, I don't think that would be brought up unless we have the necessary votes to pass them.
Right. Well, yeah, you usually don't bring something to the floor unless you know. And I mean, that's why I think it's fair to say that you may be surprised some of your colleagues with that.
No, I did not. In fact, I was open with my colleagues on what my position was early on.
Okay.
When we went down the path that I felt was difficult, I told them this was how difficult that would be and where that would push me. It was my obligation, I felt, to sign it out of the conference committee so we can get it on the floor. But leadership and others and conference members knew what my vote was coming out of there.
Okay. You know, the governor came out with a statement basically saying, hey, let's get this done and supportive. Let's say it doesn't happen. Let's say it doesn't pass. What were the chances of her? Would you ever encourage her to call a special session and deal with this in a special session and not have all the other sort of levers that impact negotiations?
Well, first off, I'd argue with your premise. All the levers that affect the action would be there even in a special session.
Okay.
But yes, that has been discussed with the governor's office, not just this year, but other times. I don't think the governor, the difficulty is if you call a special session, it better be successful.
That's true, yeah. It's
Okay.
like bringing a bill to the floor if you don't have the votes.
Precisely,
Yeah.
precisely. Only it's much more costly with a special. So counting votes, as is evident from this week, is not easy to do. So while that is a feasible aspect, I don't see that occurring.
Mm-hmm. Well, switching gears, let's talk about the budgets. The House passed the general fund budget that started in your committee, and there was some good news coming out of that because they were able to add some more money, more than $70 million between the budget and the supplemental. Talk about how that was possible in terms of where that money comes from.
Well, I've spoken of this before, Todd, but part of that starts with the way that we as Republicans have taken on how we deal with the budgets. We've changed up the methodologies, we've changed up how to calculate the estimates. We've made it so that we have to be conservative in our estimates and in the way that we deploy the money and appropriate it. So having said all that, that's the reason we wind up with surpluses many, many times. Most of the time, in fact, the past few years. But I try, when I lay out the budget and do things, I try to spend less than necessary because what we're dealing with are really estimates. We don't know how much money is going to come in.
So I try to trim back some in areas, and I did that. Plus, knowing that the House was going to have to deal with it, and knowing that the House were going to have to make changes, because we always do, I wanted to leave some leeway there so that we wouldn't have to intrude into or adjust those estimates so that we would put ourselves in jeopardy. So that's why we did that. I think it worked out pretty well this year.
Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of work together, right, between the House and Senate chairman to make sure you're, because I remember years ago there was not always that cohesiveness and everything, but it seems like you and Chairman Reynolds work pretty well together.
We do. We're very different people, and it's difficult for me to work with anybody, or maybe for anybody to work with me. I don't know which, but he and I discuss things early and often. We discuss during and after. We've been in contact together today, on back and forth on texting and such. So, and yet we try to stay out of each other's way, so that we can have the leeway to accomplish what we need to do. Always having eyes, second, third, and fourth sets of eyes on the people's money is always a good thing. Mm-hmm. And I think we're doing a pretty good job with that, in trying to meet the needs of the state.
Well, I was going to ask you, how do you, are you pretty comfortable with where the general fund ended up? I mean, I know everybody's asking for more, and you did plus up most agencies. So are you pleased with what the result has been? Mostly.
There's some parts I'm unhappy with. There's some parts that I would do differently, but that's true with everything that you do. But I am pleased with the amount of, how can I say this? Conservatism is the best word. Carefulness and attention that we've given to these matters to try to ensure that we use the public's money appropriately, judiciously, carefully, so that we can continue with the services that are needed. Make sure those services are meeting the needs that are out there. Oversight is an important part on this. This puts us directly in contact with agency heads to inquire, where's the money going, how's it being spent, and we do that publicly and privately.
Yeah, sure. Well, look, while I've got you, I have to ask what your reaction was to the new updated State House plans that we saw in Legislative Council the other day. I mean, really great looking building and everything, exciting, but I guess we're still years off, right? 2027.
You're right. Any construction project of this magnitude is going to take a while.
Right.
But if you'll notice, it's being built quickly. The actual completion date, I think, is December 2025.
Okay.
Then we've got the interiors to fix and man, get it prepared, get all the electronics in, so that by 27, it will be occupied as the true State House.
Yeah. Well, it's an exciting prospect. It's gonna, like I said, something to look forward to, but a needed
It'll
project.
show off Alabama.
Yeah.
That's for sure. It'll be something that Alabama can bring people to, and will bring folks to Alabama to witness and to see.
What are you saying? This building is not something to show off? Or is that? All right, we'll leave it there. Well, Mr. Chairman, I know it's been a long week. Thank you for taking the time to come on the show, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
Born Henry Louis Aaron on February 5, 1934 in Mobile, baseball icon Hank Aaron first honed his baseball skills while growing up in Alabama. He is best known for breaking Babe Ruth's record of 714 home runs, ultimately hitting 755, a record that stood from 1974 to 2007. During his career, Aaron was a member of the Milwaukee and then Atlanta Braves for 21 seasons and made the National League All-Star team every year from 1955 to 1974. He won 3 Gold Glove Awards for outfield, and his lifetime records for most runs batted in and most extra base hits still stand. Aaron was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1982 with 97.8% of the votes cast. In 2002, he received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor.
Welcome back to Capitol Journal. Joining me next is John Hamm, Commissioner of the Alabama Department of Corrections. Commissioner, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate you having me.
Well, I've been eager to have you on because I was pretty jealous of Mary Sell and Alexander Willis from the Daily News taking this tour of the new prison construction going on in Elmore County. The pictures were fascinating. I'll get to those here in a minute. But can you give us an update that largely what you shared with them about where we are with that massive prison construction project in Elmore County, where we stand right now?
Yes, sir. As far as total project, we're probably 25% complete. We have a completion date of May of 2026. So, we're looking forward to that. That's getting real close to 2 years, which to us does not seem like a very long time because of all the preparation that we have to do to transition into that facility in 26. So we're staying very busy with it, but as I've told them, the day we were out there were probably 500 construction workers on the site, so there's a lot of activity out there.
Yeah, I think she described it as you're building a small town, comparing it to
right.
the population that will end up there relative to some of the other smaller towns in Alabama, which is fascinating considering it's not just a place you lock folks up. You have to provide services, things that I really didn't think about. So talk about some of those maybe things we take for granted in terms of services offered.
Yeah, and that's the thing, it's a prison and we have inmates, but also on the human element, what we have to do for those individuals. We'll have 4,000 individuals out there, inmates. So starting, we have to provide them clothing. That's not just pants and shirt, that's underwear, that's socks, that's jackets, that's hats, bed linens, hygiene items, food, educational opportunities, recreational opportunities. We have a commissary or store that if they have money on their account, they can buy other food items or other items they might need that we approve. So it's pretty comprehensive. It is like a town, but we provide every service.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's take a look at some of these photos that Alex took from the tour out there in Elmore County, because I wanted you to kind of walk us through what we're looking at. And I didn't know that's actually you there, sort of overseeing some of the things. So what are we looking at?
Right there, that picture was taken just for a small snapshot of all the gray pipe. That's conduit that we will have wires running through to basically operate the facility from opening doors to, it can manage lights, it will manage cameras, our computer system, our inmate systems that we have in there. There's miles and miles and miles of the gray conduit. Right,
and you can kind of get an idea of the scope, just how big that property is. We'll go to the next photo here. So these look like maybe cell block kind of things?
Yes, sir. Those are cells that are built there on site and then placed on pads that have been built, and those being single story, those are going to be our medical and our mental health beds.
Okay, interesting. All right, let's go to the next one. So you're kind of getting is this like a hallway here?
That is a picture of actually those cells right there have been cast. In other words, they've been cast, the concrete's been cast there on site, and the doors and stuff, and they've been set aside. And these workers are going through there making sure everything's to specification in all those cells.
Okay.
Now, once that is complete and the cells are ready to be transported, then they'll be loaded on a truck, transported to a site there where we have a pad already poured and they will be placed on that to create a housing unit.
Okay, we'll go to the next. So is this what you mean by they're moving blocks around, kind of?
Yes, sir. That's the cranes that move those things, and as you can see, you know, there's those actually look like what they call the plenum caps, which will actually fit on top of the structure where all the mechanical will be run on top of the facility.
Yeah, just massive in scale. Let's go to the next. Okay, this is interesting because this looks like a jail. This looks like more like a prison that you're accustomed to. So is this closer to the finished version that we might see?
Yes, sir. That's the sails have been put in place, the roof's been put on, so this is more. Yeah, you can tell that this looks like a prison. Those are 4-man sails, and as you can see, there's you know, about 8 doors there, and we have 256 beds in each one of our housing units. So yeah, that's what you typically see as a prison, but currently we have very few of those. Currently we have big dormitories.
Yeah, I remember seeing those pictures.
Yeah, so
I mean, yeah, okay, and this looks like a cell itself.
That is correct. That is a 2-man cell right there with the bunk beds, the little table, and of course the lavatory and the toilet.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it looks like it's starting to take shape. Oh, and I thought it was interesting. I mean, the fact that you have a water tower speaks to the whole thing about it being a town. I mean, this is what, you know, one of the things that little towns have.
Yes, sir. That is correct. That's getting real close to being complete. That's a 1 million gallon water tower.
Wow. Well, I mean, I appreciate you walking us through those, and I'm glad we could share with our audience because, you know, we talk about this new prison project. You know, they passed it, I guess it was back in 21. Really been talking about prisons and the need for new ones for 10 years or more. And so now it's starting to take shape. But there have been cost overruns, right? Inflation, supply chain stuff, maybe some complying with the court orders and everything.
Yes.
So how important is it for you for lawmakers to see the progress, see what they're actually buying, considering it's costing a lot more than they first anticipated?
That is correct. Yeah, I mean, it's very important for them to see it, and we've actually had groups of them go out there and to lay eyes on the construction site so they can see it. And then plus, you know, we've relayed information to them that is not an Alabama issue. It's across the country. Any state that is building prisons running into the same issue. Utah had the same issue. I think Indiana may be having the same issue. They're building about a 4,000 bed facility, and they have a projected of $1.2 billion cost. So it's around the country. So it's very important, though, for our legislators to see what's happening in there, and plus the scope of it, because, you know, if most of our facilities now 1,200, 1,400 beds, if we was building one of those, it'd be different. This is 4,000 beds, as you mentioned earlier. It's bigger than a lot of our towns here in the state, so just the magnitude is important for people to see it. And it's important that, you know, we are doing this because, you know, we have people, I know Governor Ivey in her State of the State talking about, you know, everybody's telling us what we should do. Well, they talk about the facilities being old. You know, you got to look at Tutwiler was opened in 1942. They do need repairs, so we're doing something about it. We're building more efficient facilities, and, you know, unfortunately, we do have a price tag that was not what was anticipated.
Mm-hmm. And I want to get to some more of that stuff, but you do have critics, and some of them will say, look, we have systemic problems with violence, with you know, things like that in our prisons. And I hear the refrain, we can't build our way out of this. We have to, you know, that we have to address some of the systemic problems that the court has also talked about. So how do you address those concerns when you hear that?
Well, it's there's no one silver bullet. Yes, you can't just build prisons to get out of this situation. It has to be a concerted effort. You know, construction does have to be part of it, because the construction, as you saw in the pictures, there's cells. So that allows our officers to better manage that inmate population than having a dorm of 300 inmates.
Oh,
so,
well, yeah, just those numbers alone.
Yeah, so the management of it's going to help tremendously. But yeah, and then in turn, that's going to help on some of the violence, the contraband, but also, you know, we're really focusing on programming. We partner with Ingram State Technical College. They do all of our vocational ed training. We have, you know, several types of substance abuse training, anger management, various programs there. You know, we're really concentrating on providing those to the inmates, so it will be beneficial to them when they do get out.
The last prison oversight meeting, I remember you sharing this graphic. It was kind of alarming because it showed the prison population continuing to grow, which, I mean, you use this analogy of, or a metaphor of a bathtub, right? That
yes,
you don't control the spigot and you don't control the drain, but you have to manage what's in that bathtub. I thought that was interesting. But, you know, here in the legislature, laws get passed every year. Criminal laws, sometimes resentencing laws, things like that are going to impact your population. You don't control the legislature, obviously.
Correct.
So how do you go about like anticipating, okay, is this going to increase the population? Is this going to, what do we have to do to adjust? That must be a job unto itself.
It is, and you know, Alabama, we're always going to be a tough on crime state, and I always say, you know, we need to be smart on crime as well. And you know, the legislature passing some of these bills that might be tough on crime, they also, this legislature and the last one have been very supportive of the mission that we're trying to accomplish at corrections, because we didn't get here overnight. We're not going to get out of this predicament overnight. And plus, there's no one single issue that you can point to. If we change that, then everything will be okay. So it's several issues. The legislature's helping, but some of the laws that do get passed, they will have an impact on us. So we're trying to you know, keep in contact with the Sentencing Commission, because they track sentencing laws and what kind of impact it's going to have, not just on corrections, but the criminal justice system in general, because, you know, some of them might get probation, and then that's another state agency that'll be dealing with administrative office of courts, you know, the judges and things. How's it going to impact the whole system, not just one department?
Yeah, interesting. Well, I know one emphasis has been trying to hire new staff, particularly guards, right? We definitely have a shortage there, but y'all have had a concerted effort. How's that going? Because I know a lot of people in this building have been watching that closely.
Yes, sir, and that is probably one area that we focus on the most, and we have since we've been here, because it's hard. Just the state of our workforce and stuff is hard to recruit and attract good workers, so we really put emphasis on that.
Well, they probably have options, right? And in an economy like this, they have other opportunities, and so you got to.
It's a buyer's market.
Yeah.
So you know, they can shop their skills around, and you know, we're a government entity, so it's more of a framework of what we can do. But we have 110 security personnel in the academy right now, so that has been steadily increasing since the governor, the state personnel department, and the legislature, you know, gave the pay raise last March. Our numbers have gone from single digits in the academy to, you know, 20, 25 to where we have 110 there now. So it has been increasing.
Maybe this is an obvious question, but just looking at that new construction, obviously this is going to be a state-of-the-art facility, brand new. Is that going to help? I mean, seems like it would be more alluring to go work in a facility like that than some of the older dilapidated facilities.
We think it will help tremendously. Like I said, it's you know, you're going to work in a new facility as opposed to some of our older ones, and plus the sale issue. You know, we have a little bit more control over our inmates, so it's going to help.
Yeah. Well, look, Commissioner, we're out of time, but thanks for coming and sharing some of this. Thank you for allowing Mary and Alex to tour the plant. I'm really, I think it's good to be able to share updates and living
Absolutely.
color with our viewers.
Absolutely. Anytime, Todd.
Okay. We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
Tuscaloosa served as the second capital of Alabama from 1826 to 1846 when the capital moved to Montgomery. The Greek Revival and Federal-styled Capitol building was leased to Alabama Central Female College for use as a concert hall and classrooms until it was destroyed by fire in 1923. The architectural influence of the structure is reflected in many of the buildings on the University of Alabama campus, and the ruins are a city park.
That's our show for this week. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week, starting on Monday, with our nightly coverage of the Alabama Legislature. That's 10:30 here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capital Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.